There's no question that we cannot speed train in a state of fatigue. Speed training is neurological, it's electrical, it's all CNS based, central nervous system based. So if we are going to improve our central nervous system, we cannot do it in a state of fatigue.
Tony Holler, welcome back to the Strong Female Athlete Podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, this is so awesome. And I actually just saw you recently on Dr. Sean Baker's podcast, which is crazy because two opposite worlds collide, I guess. And yeah, I just like couldn't believe it. I was like, Tony Holler's on like the Carnivore Doctors podcast.
That,
It was
that's
so
crazy.
cool.
You know, I didn't even know who he was. My assistant track coach last year, Nico Capizio, he went on a carnivore diet for like a month, and he got probably as fit as he's ever been in his life. He just, like shrunk down to just muscle and bone. And so I knew of Dr. Sean Baker and all that kind of stuff, but he started doing my atomic speed workout, and his people are like making fun of him, doing funny marches and walks and things. And these people don't realize that that's how we train speed. And he has gotten himself up to, I think, close to 19 miles an hour, weighing 260 pounds. And we have a thing called the truck sticks now that is really cool, where for big football players, we take their weight in kilograms times their speed in meters per second, and we call it a truck stick. It's momentum, basically. And his truck stick is up over 800 now, which would make him probably an all-conference high school football player at the age of 58. So it just kind of sums up that speed is the fountain of youth, and it's so cool to, like you say, to have two different worlds kind of come together.
It's so random, but yeah, Dr. Sean Baker is awesome, and I don't do a full strict carnivore diet, but I do embrace red meat for sure. I definitely shied away from it when I was younger, and just combining that with doing sprint training and strength training, I've never been in better shape either as I've aged. And Dr. Sean Baker, I didn't realize he was in his late 50s, but he's a big dude.
Yeah,
He
like
is like,
260 pounds.
yeah.
And
And
I totally agree with you that, the red meat thing is really important. And I think it's really important for women because, we've just been taught, we've been taught some weird things in our upbringing. And yeah, I go all the way back to reading a book called Fit or Fat, where it said not to eat fat, that you need to eat all carbs. So I lived on like bagels and like low fat cookies and things like that. And you gain 20 pounds. and it's like, maybe this doesn't work. And the more you eat protein, the less hungry you are. And I think there's some magic when you mix it with sprinting that's really interesting. I say that, like, let's eat like a cat. Cats are carnivores, and not like a cow. Cows just kind of stand around and get big and eat carbs. So at the very least, I think we need to really be mindful about getting protein maybe 3 times a day.
I know you have those shirts, rest, recover, sleep. Is that what it is? Yeah. And I was thinking maybe we should make shirts that are like steak, sprint, sun or something.
Oh, I tell you what, I
You
think you're
should
onto
do
something
that.
because you know how I feel about outdoor living. Indoor living is the curse of the modern age. We need sun. We need outdoors. Indoors will make us sick. So that thing about the sun also is a source of dopamine for us. Vitamin D, which leads to dopamine, which gives us confidence and allows us to move faster and things like that. So I think you're really onto something. Steak, no, steak, sleep, and
Steak,
sun.
sprint, sun.
Oh, sprint and sun. That's even better.
I really think that's the life hack right there to just getting completely jacked and just tan.
Yes, yes. And once again, we've been, like scared to death about, like the evils of the sun. And
Mhm.
there's no doubt that if you should not get burned, like if you're pale skinned, if you're of Irish descent and have red hair, you should not go out and get sunburned. But but you still need to get outside at the very least. And I think that if your skin can accept the sun, I think that there's huge benefits.
Yeah. Well, let's come back to rest, recover, sleep. I know you preach this a lot for athletes to get faster, get the most out of sprint training, be game ready. And I think nowadays, especially with young athletes just so busy and on their grind and signing up for so much, they feel like more is better. But maybe we can just start with why that can really hinder speed, because a lot of them, their goal is speed. So,
Yeah, I think I could talk for hours on this subject, so I'll try to keep it streamlined. There's no question that we cannot speed train in a state of fatigue. Speed training is neurological, it's electrical, it's all CNS based, central nervous system based. So so if we are going to improve our central nervous system, we cannot do it in a state of fatigue. We are when we're tired. I picture being jet lagged, where you can't even think very well. You can't do advanced math. You can't read a book because you're too tired to focus. When you're in that state, you also cannot improve your speed. So even though speed training doesn't take a long time, as you know, you can do it a couple times a week for 20 minutes, and it's wonderful. But the consistency that it requires, week after week, and finding a time in the day when you are not tired. And as you know, so many kids today are paraded around to tournaments and stuff on weekends, and they're staying in hotels and they're not getting good sleep and they're playing like 10 games. And when that happens, I don't know if you can speed train for the next 4 days. They are so tired and so worn down that they can't do it. And I think that any type of performance, not just speed, but as I mentioned, reading or math, being a student, being a good parent, being a good spouse, all those things, we are in a way performing at the best of our capabilities, which requires a base of rest, recovery, sleep, nutrition, and hydration. If we are not doing those things, we never get to the next level, which is performance. And so I'm really big on that. And I'm going too long here, but I want to go right back to the idea that we suffer from a disease of more. Coaches are so afraid to do less and achieve more because outworking everybody else is a way to create job security for them. Like even when they get beat, if they can say, well, nobody works harder than us, they keep their job. And I think parents grew up with this. It's called anchor bias, where we just learn that to be a winner, you have to outwork the losers. And it's really not true. It's really working smarter and doing things right.
you always say racehorses, not workhorses, and I love that. So maybe you can just talk about what encompasses a racehorse as opposed to a workhorse.
Well, I think we learn by stories, and I'll apologize to Saquon Barkley right up front. Um, I tell this story a lot now, but he called me back in February. Saquon Barkley, the MVP of the league, and had an epic season at the age of 26, which is really old for a running back. And he called me and he said, Coach, I love your stuff. I feel like I've lost a step. I'm getting hurt all the time. What can I add to my workouts? Once again, it's the more stuff. And I've seen the videos of his workouts. And so I kind of know that he is an extremist in terms of hard work. And so I said, well, you're not going to like my answer. I think you need to do less. And he said, so maybe I shouldn't do like 20 hundreds. Maybe I should only do 5. I just shook my head and said, nah, no, don't do any hundreds. And so, and then he says, Coach, I feel like I've been brainwashed. And I said, I think we all have. And so it's a great story. And I got him hooked up with Brian Kula, who trains Christian McCaffrey, and the incredible heptathlete Anna Hall, and several other top-notch people. And they met in LA, and he taught Saquon how to speed train. And Saquon speed trained twice a week during the season. He was injury free. He had the best year of his life. I texted him one time and I said, leaner, younger, faster. And I think he was all three. And it's just it's just something that I think that, especially in soccer, where you deal with kids a lot, where soccer is like, yeah, but soccer, we have to run 7 miles. It still goes back to being healthy and fast. Every coach I've ever talked to, when I said, describe your best soccer player, they always start off with fast. Second word is explosive, which means highly athletic. They never say, well, they're slow and weak, but they can run all day. They never say that. But that's kind of how soccer kids train, which I think is kind of like detraining the things they need to get better at.
Yeah, and it's also that endurance bucket, it's so full already. And if someone feels they have to improve endurance more, it's like, well, are you guys standing around at practice? You must not be doing anything. So I think they always feel they have to do extra conditioning. And I get a lot of pushback from sports parents, mainly soccer field based sports, where I say, look, I don't program conditioning during the season. That's a risk factor. And they push back and they're like, why not? Like, she needs to like last the entire game. And I'm just like, well, as far as injuries, we can't do this. She really needs to work on her speed and stay healthy and do less. And again, it's that struggle of doing less and not adding extra. But then players start to buy in when they see they have long term health. They actually look forward to the workouts. That's one thing my girls tell me all the time. We love speed workouts.
Yes.
They love it.
And kids are really good at what they like.
Yeah, that's true too.
We all are, right?
Yeah.
Like if we take the old school model of sports in America, basically we make, of course, any fool can get another fool tired, but we try to do more and more and more, and we just teach more and more, and we get sloppy, and it's okay because we're getting in shape and all those things. And practice is not fun either when we do that, which, man, if we could make practice more likable, more game like, and like you said just a minute ago, like if your practices don't resemble a game, like what in the hell are you doing in practice? Like if you're not moving and spending 90 minutes or whatever, getting in some play like running, then I don't think you're practicing right. And then, as you know, every soccer kid plays too many games. I mean, they play game after game. And these people that have tournaments, they're not thinking about the health of the kid. It's a money grab. It is it is a multi-billion-dollar business in America today, where we have kids come in in football 7-on-7 tournaments, or in basketball it's AAU basketball tournaments, and they play way too many games. And it's not because they're developmental. It is literally, that's how they can charge a lot of money. And it's sad because I think kids are getting worse because of it. They're getting hurt more often. And you mentioned speed as being healthy. I think the speed and healthy are the same thing. It's like, if a great barometer of your health is how fast you can run. If you are really slow because of what you did last weekend, you are unhealthy because of what you did last weekend, which means we need to maybe rethink what we do.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it is such a good marker of health, and there must be some ancestral roots that tie back to that or something, but I've definitely seen that with my athletes, just even adding in 1 to 2 times a week of speed in season, and I know you work with a lot of field-based athletes and their teams and coaches, and you always tell coaches, "Well, let's do this in the warm-up and do it before practice." So what would that look like? So maybe the coaches listening can get rid of, excuse my language, their half-assed warm up where they're just like jogging around the field. Like, what can they do instead to improve speed and keep athletes healthy?
Yeah, the whole idea of a warm up was literally the idea that we're going to get our bodies hot. Um, And then also they said to stretch, and of course my track teams haven't stretched for 25 years. A stretch rubber band does not shoot very far. We want to be elastic and springy and explosive. We don't want, yoga makes us feel really good, and yoga is wonderful. But it does not allow us to jump higher or to sprint faster. Matter of fact, if you did yoga and then tested speed or tested jump ability, those things would go down because of stretching. So that's why we don't stretch. And the whole idea that stretching prevents injury is wrong as well. It absolutely has no effect on preventing injury. So what I tell people is stop thinking of it like a warm up and start thinking about it as a speed workout that will serve you well as a warm up. The counterpoint of that, high school track and field, our coach would tell us to take a mile run before practice, and we were supposed to wear our sweats even if it was like 90 degrees, because that's what a warm up was. It did us no good, but it got us kind of sweaty, and that meant we were warmed up, and then we stretched, and then we went through way too much running at very sub-max race paces. And somehow the fastest guys still were the fastest guys, but everybody was detrained. So getting back to your team situation, what I would do would be stop thinking of it as a warm-up. Look into my atomic speed workout, doesn't cost anything, where you do 10 speed drills at max intent. So all of a sudden, instead of like jogging, which does nothing for you, maybe even detrains you, these speed drills will actually maybe improve your ability to get on and off the ground, absorb force, get big in the front, short in the back, things that sprinters do that joggers don't, full use of the arms, which is things that kids need to be taught how to do. So you're doing 10 things of value for about 5 seconds each. Takes 10 minutes. And if you're doing it at what I call an 11 on the scale of 10, I used to be a big stereo guy back in the 70s, we all were, where you could turn your volume up to 10. Well, we're constantly trying to turn it to 11. We're always trying to do every drill better than we've ever done it. So the intent is so important. Just doing things just does not move the needle. John Wooden said that never mistake activity for achievement. And that's the way, as you know, most warm-ups are. It's just an activity to get people a little bit warmer, but it doesn't do anything to improve your speed or your performance. And then the key thing is to literally time 2 sprints. It can be 2 40-yard dashes, 2 10-yard flies. If you're doing 40-yard dashes, you can time them with a stopwatch and write them down. That way you get some idea about the health of your team. If your team is slow, you need to look in the mirror and say, what have I done to make them slow? Or if a kid is slow, you need to have a talk like, hey, did you not sleep last night? And they'll be like, did you talk to my mom? No, but you're slow. I know that lack of sleep creates slow athletes, unhealthy athletes. So the general picture is you do 10 speed drills in 10 minutes, 2 time sprints with a 5-minute break in between. And if you have a big team, you break them up into like 3 or 4 groups, divide and conquer. And as you said, just doing that twice a week will not only maintain speed, but you'll probably find that your team gets faster during that hard season.
It's so powerful how it just compounds over time, just microdosing it like that. And it's so short and quick that it doesn't ever take away from a coach's practice, which I think is like a coach's fear sometimes when adding some form of performance or speed training. They think it's going to take away from time on the ball, but this workout's so short and it's just more bang for buck than their regular warm up, which usually either obliterates the girls or makes the girls fall asleep.
Do you feel better after an atomic speed workout than you felt before it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, I think there's that cognitive component to it where it just lights up your brain. And I've actually heard that from a few soccer coaches who have implemented it where they said, wow, my girls have never felt more ready for practice, or they're more locked in and focused at practice when they used to struggle getting them going in the first 10 minutes. And I'm like, wow, there's something to that mentally as well. Not just physically improving speed, but just like lighting up their brains.
I think it's almost like a shot of caffeine. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like my kids, school is a death march. I wish I could change high schools. I spent my whole life in a high school, but but when kids go through the death march of class to class to class to class, it like crushes the soul. And so kids will walk into practice just beaten and battered kind of. And when we do our speed workout, which is very similar to the atomic speed workout, um, they have personality, they have life, and there's a word for that. It is a potentiator. In other words, a potentiator is really what you want instead of a warm up, because a potentiator makes the next thing better, which is like a weight room thing. Like if I ran a weight room, I would love to send those 30 kids to somebody like me, do a speed workout, and then come in and lift, because they're going to move heavier weights faster and be more focused, as you said. Matter of fact, if I was a chemistry teacher, as you were talking about the cognitive stuff, I would love for my kids to have gone through an atomic speed workout before chemistry class, because they would be better students.
Yeah. It's so true. You do feel so much better afterwards, and I've heard that from every single athlete we've implemented this with. And we do a lot of our speed sessions at 8:30 a.m. in the summer, and they come in all tired. Oh, I have to wake up early in the summer months. But then after those workouts, they're like, "Whoa, we're ready for the day." So it
It's a
is
wake up.
like caffeine.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't, it has to be neurological, right? It has to be like sprinting in a straight line as fast as you can. Soccer coaches say, well, we never sprint in a straight line. Football coaches, oh, we never sprint in a straight line. Yeah, but it is the most extreme movement of the human body. Straight line, spiked up with the wind, getting timed. Nothing is more extreme, which means in order to do that, we have to have real fast contractions and relaxations. If our muscles don't relax, they'll get injured. And so it's bang, 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 bang. And that the speed of that contract relax cycle, I think, wakes up the body. And then there's the carryover that as we get faster in a straight line, we get faster in all directions, but we get better at changing directions because our nervous system is more advanced. It's awake. It takes a long time to change a nervous system, but you can do it. Speed grows like a tree, but stay consistent and you can continue to improve speed well into your 30s or even 40s.
Yeah, and I tagged you in that post yesterday. Faster at age 35 than when I was 21 years old in college. And it's so amazing because I didn't think this was possible. But now, after talking to you for many years and just learning about true speed training, it makes so much sense because I basically just have given my body the correct inputs and those electrical inputs. And I did sprint when I was young, when I was growing up and playing in college, but I wasn't recovering enough.
Repeat
I would
sprints. It was like kind of like conditioning, right?
it was, and I also don't think my plyometrics were twitchy enough because I was doing plyos for minutes on end, not short and fast, and I also wasn't taking that recovery time in between. I was also doing some speed workouts sore, and not totally fresh. So now that I'm so dialed in, it's like, okay, it does make a lot of sense. But if you would have told me 10 years ago I would have been faster in my 30s, I would have said you're crazy because when you turn 35, you're like, oh, well, my knees are going to start to ache, my hips might give
Downhill.
out. And I'm like, I feel like I'm a 15-year-old girl over here.
And I have a question for you. So If you're doing the speed workout a couple times a week and you really have to be fresh, so you can't crush yourself like the day before, you have to really plan your week so that you're fresh twice a week. You definitely are not doing as much conditioning as you've done as a younger person. Do you find that you are in poor shape because of a focus on speed?
Absolutely not. And I'll give an example. I play a lot of like pickleball and racket sports, and we're like non-stop with those. And my heart rate is not getting up too high where I'm like wheezing. Like I feel really good conditioning wise, which is really strange because I'm not going on these long jogs. And yeah, it's pretty incredible.
And I think I don't understand it, to tell you the truth, but it's almost like speed training is an alternative to conventional endurance training, where you can get fast and get into really good shape. Now, Steve Magnus, the distance guy, he's a great rider and all that stuff. He'll be
Yeah.
like, no, if you're going to be a great miler, you've got to run 40. Of course you do. If you are in an endurance event where endurance wins the race, yes, you have to really focus on those specific things. But I would argue, I understand people saying that soccer is an endurance event. But when I say, who are your best players? And they say fast, explosive, it's at least a hybrid. It's at least a hybrid of speed and explosiveness and endurance. And if you got fast enough where even at your sub max speeds, you're still faster than everybody else, that's almost like endurance.
Mhm. Yeah, and for the youth soccer community, a lot of these girls are practicing 3 to 4 times a week, so they're getting a lot of aerobic work. I mean, it's almost too much, and they're almost detraining speed at that point. So, I think to your point, if they add in that speed training, it's gonna continue to get that endurance side even better. And I know you've talked about speed reserve before. Do you wanna explain that?
Sure. And, once again, I love telling stories. A football coach that used to be old school, now he's new school, and now he feeds the cats. Stop conditioning, shorter practices, all those kinds of things. Let kids sleep in on Saturday and Sunday instead of bringing them in at 6 a.m. All that make them a man type of crap, throw it out, and instead focus on performance. So he called me and said, hey, we're 4-0 now. And my great running back had 419 yards of total offense last night, 331 on the ground. And I'm like, holy crap, what a game that kid had. He said, but yeah, coach, but he's so fresh. He's so fresh now. He's so fast. He's so athletic. I said, well, how many carries? He said 33 carries, 331 yards. I said, was he tired on that last carry? And he goes, well, hell yeah, he was, coach. He was really tired, but he's still faster than everybody else. And this always gives me chills. There's nothing I could have done during the week that would have made him fresh for that final carry. In other words, the game's going to be hard. So, so let's not run 1,000 miles to get accustomed to low outputs, to slow running, where the game rewards speed and explosiveness. And I would argue the same thing with soccer people. I don't care if you run 7 miles. The game rewards speed and explosiveness. You don't, if you're in France and you're picking your national team, you don't pick slow people to be on that team. You pick fast people. So if that's the case, why pick fast people and then detrain them by running them to death? And so it's just a new way to think about things. And kind of what you were saying, I just haven't heard any coaches say I tried it and I'm going back to the other way.
Yeah.
No, nobody says that.
That's so true. Yeah, they're just bought in because everyone's so energized and healthy and not sore and ready for match day. And But I will get some coaches or even parents who haven't tried it. The main pushback I get when I say, well, athletes shouldn't train speed sore, they should always be fresh. Their argument is, well, what if they're playing in double overtime? They're going to be sore and they have to like learn how to push through that. Or if they're running a 400-meter sprint and then they get through the heats and then they make the final, they're going to be sore in that final. Like, we need to train sore so we can be ready for that situation. Have you gotten that argument a lot? And what do you say to those people?
That is as old as dirt. I mean,
Yeah.
that is. I mean, I tell people that sports in America took off right after World War II because World War II soldiers, anybody that's ever read about being a soldier or was one will say that when you're with a group of men and you're going through really hard things, the bonds that are formed are absolutely unbelievable. They can't. Matter of fact, they can't find it in civilian life when they come home. It is a love of the band of brothers type of thing. And so when they came back from World War II, they wanted their own boys. They didn't care about girls, but they wanted their own boys to go through really hard things and maybe not get shot in the process. So instead of war, we set up hard sports, whether it's football, basketball. Baseball is a stand around sport, but even baseball teams coaches would run them to death. And it was all this toughness and be able to fight through things at the end. But I really believe what Vince Lombardi said, that fatigue makes cowards of us all. And if we're in a fatigue state, we're not very tough. So I think that fatigue is the tired is the enemy. The fatigue is the enemy. And I believe there's a magic that happens late in a race or late in a game, because it's a game, especially if we love what we're doing. Love is not a soft drug. Love is one of the toughest drugs in the world. And if we really love our teammates, we love our coach, we love our sport, we're not going to lay down and die in overtime. I mean, we're going to fight through it. And I would much rather have fresh, healthy, fast athletes fighting for me than athletes that have run 1,000 miles and are like, can hardly pick up their feet before the game starts. So it goes back to that speed reserve again, that we want the fastest athletes possible because game speeds are easy for really fast athletes. Slow athletes get worn out with game speeds. So we just want the best athletes possible. And if you're a parent of a young soccer player and it's all about the scholarships and all that kind of stuff, they're not going to pick the kids that are the best at the marathon. Mm-hmm. They're going to pick the fast, explosive kids. Now, a lot of colleges still train wrong. They may give your kid a scholarship and then run them to death. I hope they don't. But I think that you better train the skills that make great soccer players, that make a soccer athlete wanted at the next level.
Mm-hmm. I had the UNC women's soccer sports scientist on earlier last year, and she says they do speed in season, off season. They won the national championship this year. And she even said that, like, even just one time a week for the starters and then maybe 2 times for the rest of the team, the gains they made in that 3 to 4 month season were insane. And then obviously they won. So there's definitely something to it. And I think if you can do your speed workouts as fresh as you can, that's where you get the physiological benefit. And it does sound counterintuitive for like match day if you're in overtime or you're sore pushing through, but it makes a lot of sense that you want athletes to be ready going into that and not completely obliterated.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree that you want the most athletic version of that kid at the end of the game. And I bet the person you were talking to, I bet she would also say their team stayed healthy.
No season-ending injuries.
And that it's absolutely crazy. All these sprint-based football teams have, like 65 guys start the season, 65 guys playing the state championship game. It is like they don't get concussions. Like maybe even concussions are the result of a tired body that can't defend itself. The sprained ankle is maybe a tired body that cannot establish stability in that ankle when it needs to. Tired athletes just get hurt, and I think that getting back to the North Carolina girl, the way she said that maybe one time a week for the people that play the most,
Yeah.
and 2 times a week for people who are not playing as much. That's exactly what football programs are doing. Everybody's wearing GPS now, and so if you're a wide receiver playing on a Saturday afternoon for TCU or something, or University of Michigan, wherever, and you are getting to top speeds 15, 20, 30 times in a game, you don't need 2 doses of speed that week. You got one of those doses in the game. But if you're standing and literally in a college football game, they have like 80 kids that are watching the other 11 play. Maybe some of those kids aren't getting exposed to max velocity. And so those kids really need it twice that week. So that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I want to come back to what you said earlier about coaches, if they time their girls like 40 yards and they're super slow, you need to really question yourself what you're doing. So what's maybe like a good or excellent timed 40 for a 14 to 16-year-old girl? Because usually that's when we time, and that who listens to this podcast.
I've only timed 2 girls under 4.9 in the 40 handheld, and they were both like elite college. They went on to be elite college track athletes. They were like state championship level sprinters. So when somebody says is 5 flat good, the answer is always very nuanced. Well, it's good compared to a 5.2, and that's why we need to write stuff down, because when it really comes down to it, yes, we want to teach kids to be competitive with each other. Sports are competitive. We have to learn how to win and lose. We have to learn how to say, hey, I'm faster than my friend. But we also have to say, but there's 10 people faster on my team than I am. We have to, that's healthy. That's what we have to do. But the most important thing is to compete against yourself. And when you write down times, you can say, you're 1 mile an hour faster, or you were on a 5.440, 2 months ago. Now you're on a 5.1. That is life changing. That's the difference between nobody wanting you to play and now all of a sudden University of North Carolina is recruiting you. So speed is really, really important in that way. So I think that overall, with miles per hour, which I think you're aware of our miles per hour stuff, you have to have like a free lap timing system or something. And you time up yourself at max speed for 10 yards. Like you have a 30-yard run in, you're at top speed for 10, and you just take the number 20.45, divide it by the time, and you get miles per hour. Now, for boys, like on my track team, we hand out bands for 20, 21, 22, and 23. The 23 guys are elite. I've only had one guy at 24 miles an hour, and he won the Milrose games 3 weeks ago. Marcellus Moore won the Milrose games. He got 5th in the national championships. He got 15th in the Olympic trials at the age of 21 last year. So, in other words, if you're going over 24 miles an hour in practice, you are an elite male. For girls, you subtract 3. Okay. If a girl can hit 21 miles an hour, they need to be training for the Olympics.
Yeah.
If they hit 20, they are going to win a state medal at their state track meet. I don't care what state it is, they may win it all. 19 is really good. 18 is solid. 17
Yay.
is entry level. You are 18?
I'm like an 18.3 at age 35, so I'm working on it.
that is really, really good. I mean, that's not just middle-aged fast. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. But no, that is uh, Princeton University, when they started feeding the Tigers 4 years ago in lacrosse, they only had 3 guys on their team that could hit 20. The average speed was in the 18s. So
Oh my
as a,
gosh.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, is that
That's
slow, right?
crazy.
That's crazy
Well,
slow.
I've always been a cat. I've always been a sprinter. I did indoor track when I was younger. I did the 200 meter, the 300 meter. I loved it. And so I'm not like new to sprinting, but for like mid 30s, it's like, whoa, like I feel good about it.
So getting back to the 40-yard dash, um, you almost have to be able to break 20 miles an hour
Mhm.
to run in the 4.9s
Right. Okay.
in the
That makes
40.
sense. Yeah.
So just working backwards, like if you're sub 5, you're elite for a
Mhm.
girl. Just amazing.
Yeah.
If you're 5'1", you're close. If you're 5'2", you're 1 degree removed from. I mean, like, you are probably considered fast.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say there are some girls playing soccer that can't break 6,
I've seen that. Yeah.
and that is
I've
not.
seen in initial assessments with even just high schoolers, it's sad because it's like, wow, you have not gotten this speed stimulus at all. But thankfully, speed you can catch up. And if you stick with it, you can really improve and make some serious
Yes,
gains.
I think and going back, like, it was somebody says, is 6 flat good in the 40 for a girl soccer player? I'm like, no, it's not. But
Yeah.
but it's still a lot better than 6'3". 6. So it's all relative, and really the only thing that we have control of is what we do. If we are ranked last on our team in speed, we cannot change unless we, like do a Tanya Harding thing and break the legs of our teammates. We cannot change. We cannot slow them down. There's no defense. All we can do is do what we can do. And I would say if that 6.0 could run a 5.8, that would probably be a 1 mile an hour improvement in speed. And 1 mile an hour changes the athlete. That
Yeah.
that 5'8", you're still not considered fast, but maybe you can get on the field. Maybe you have a shot. So I just think you need to play the long game, keep it fun, write down your times, and as you said, it's not miserable training. It's actually some of the most enjoyable training you'll do. And I think that if you focus on yourself and your self improvement, I'd say that's pretty good advice in anything in your life.
It really is enjoyable, and I'm going to the track in an hour after we get off this recording and putting my spikes on. So I always look forward to my speed workouts and I never miss them because they're that fun and all the athletes say the same. And for everyone listening, if you haven't tried this with your team or your kids, you have to really start now because they're going to really improve. They're going to get that joy back in training. And when you have joy, you also have motivation to want to continue to do it. So, yeah, it's just we do have to get away from our old ways of just running athletes into the ground and completely obliterating them and detraining speed.
Yeah, and like, a lot of people will claim, like, hey, we do it the old way and we win 80% of our games, whatever. And what I say is that dumb is always beaten dumber. That just because and I think every coach that you can do a lot of things wrong as a coach and still win because you're charismatic. You have the gift of getting kids to believe. And if kids believe, they're capable of almost anything, regardless of their training. Regardless of their training, they can go out and perform at a pretty high level because they have a high belief level. Um, but what if we could train smarter to get them faster and more athletic, and they still believe? Now all of a sudden, it's a real competitive advantage. You're almost unbeatable if you're doing things right, and the coach has that beautiful charisma, and the girls or guys are all into it, and all that.
Yeah. Are there any last words you would say about just the importance of rest, recovery, sleep for speed?
Um, Probably the only other thing that I'll add, and it's a thing that's specific to my sport of track and field. The 400 meters is really hard. You have to go out and sprint at almost 100%. And matter of fact, at the 200 mark, you're supposed to run that as fast as you can plus 1 second. So if you can run at 23, you have to run that first 224. So you're not like jogging, you're it's a leap of faith because you don't know if your body will be able to finish. But because we take a sprint speed approach to the 400 instead of a endurance approach, our guys are fast in that first half, and then they're trained to understand that the last 100 meters is really going to be hard. It's going to hurt. And they also understand that we could try to train by running 1,000 miles, but that'd make us slower. So that doesn't sound good. And if we ran 1,000 miles, we would still hurt at the end because it's a different energy system.
Mhm.
So I guess this is my way. I think it's a metaphor about the way we should approach lacrosse or soccer or basketball or football, and that is that let the fourth quarter be hard. That we're not going to have confidence in the fourth quarter because we've run more gassers or more miles than the other team. It's a different way to look at it. We're going to have confidence in the fourth quarter probably because we're all already way ahead, because we're a better team because of what we do, but also because we love practice and we love our training, and we understand that there's nothing we could do that would make the fourth quarter easy or the overtime easy. We're going to have to dig down deep. And I think that if we really love what we do, it's easier to dig deep.
Mhm. And if the whole team's fully healthy, it's way easier to dig deep.
An unhealthy team, yeah, that's a losing team. And I think I coach football coaches a lot, and they have to really be careful about health because it's a collision sport. But I tell them that every football team has 10 to 15 guys that will win or lose for you, and everybody else is kind of developmental. Like every team, no team has all stars sitting on the bench. That there are certain kids that you just can't afford to lose. And if I told you that doing too much and burning the stake repeatedly day after day, you will lose those kids. Maybe people would say, well, what's the other idea? Well, the other idea is to be fast and fresh and healthy and strong and explosive and really love not just your sport, but love practice.
I think that's so brilliant, and it's, I do wanna come back quickly to the 400 meter because I always got confused as to why at high school track practices, these 400 runners are doing, like, 8 by 400s at practice. And I did it back in the day too, where I did a season where I did a 4 by 4 relay, and I remember we were just running high volume so much, and I'm like, "This doesn't make sense," and, like, I just don't understand it. It still goes on with 400-meter training, and it is that mainly endurance approach, high volume approach. So, yeah, it's just frustrating to see.
Yeah, and I think the reason why that happened, um, once again, we have coaches have a tendency to believe that hard makes great, or that more makes great, and more hard stuff makes champions. And it's not really true, but but that's what we were brought up with. And there, that anchor bias just means that the first thing we learn is accepted as true, and then it becomes our identity. So we don't want to change. And there was a guy named Clyde Hart that recruited the fastest 400 kids in America at Baylor University, and they were really good every year. And he ran them a lot. Now, what I would argue is because they were already close to their genetic ceiling of speed, that he was able to get away with that. But if I take 15-year-olds who are still developing their speed, and instead of developing their speed, we develop other traits like the ability to run a whole lot slowly, um, we are stunting their growth. And we have a tendency as coaches to look up to the Clyde Harts of the world. The guy won 20 NCAA 4x4s as a team. I mean, he's the first guy that would be on the Mount Rushmore of track coaches in the world. But yet, copying the training of uniquely elite athletes is not what we should do for 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I would still coach elite athletes my way, even in college, even if they are close to their ceiling. If they can run 24 miles an hour, we're fighting to run 24.5. That those gains, I think, will pay off hugely. And then there's no doubt that as kids get older, they're capable of enduring more without getting hurt. I don't know if that means we should do it, though.
I'm going to end there. And I think this podcast will give a lot of people something to think about. So, whether you're a parent or coach listening, try out the atomic workout, start to incorporate speed training. Make sure you're not sore and fatigued, since they're the enemy of speed development. And I'll leave all of Tony's links in the caption below. Please give him a follow. He's inspired me in my speed journey, and even wanting to participate in this meet this month. I don't think if I didn't stumble upon you a few years ago, I would be so passionate about track and speed. So thank you for inspiring me.
Well, you inspire me, and we just keep inspiring each other, and everything goes great. I feel like going out and sprinting today in the street or something because of our talk. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm about to head out there as well, and I'm excited to put my spikes on. So it's a new era for this soccer girl over here.
Good stuff.
All right, I'll see you guys next time.